First contact, worst contact. The Unity was not a warship. Commander Rhea Xavier had explained this repeatedly to her crew, most of whom had combat backgrounds despite their current diplomatic assignments. The sleek vessel, with its gleaming white hull and prominent Earth Alliance insignia, was purpose-built for first contact situations, spacious conference rooms, state-of-the-art translation systems, and luxurious guest quarters for potential alien dignitaries. What wasn't mentioned in the official specifications was the reinforced hull that could withstand direct energy weapon hits, the concealed defense systems, or the fact that every member of the diplomatic team had been selected from elite special forces units. Approaching Nexus Station, Commander, Lieutenant Park announced from the navigation console, "Veldari vessels are maintaining formation at the arranged distance." Xavier nodded, her dark eyes fixed on the curved space station growing larger in the view screen. The Veldari had chosen this neutral location for humanity's first official meeting with their species. After years of passive observation and cautious message exchanges, the reclusive aliens had finally agreed to face-to-face talks. "Status report," Xavier said, straightening her formal diplomatic uniform, navy blue with silver trim. "All systems nominal," replied Security Chief Alvarez, a deceptively gentle-looking woman whose service record included 3 classified operations that had prevented interstellar incidents. "Team is prepped and ready. Weapons secured as agreed." "Secured," Xavier repeated with the hint of a smile, "but accessible." "Always, Commander." The Unity docked with a barely perceptible shudder. Beyond the airlock waited humanity's first glimpse of the Veldari, a species known thus far only through long-range imagery and formal communications. Their technology was impressive, their cultural transmissions fascinating, but they had remained physically elusive. "Remember," Xavier addressed her team as they assembled at the airlock, "we represent Earth Alliance with dignity and respect. Our mission is peaceful exchange, but stay alert. First impressions go both ways." The team of 12 moved through the airlock into the station's neutral reception area. The architecture was elegant, sweeping arches of some pearlescent material, soft ambient lighting that seemed to emanate from the structure itself. And there, waiting in a semicircle, stood 7 Veldari. Xavier had studied the available data extensively, but seeing them in person was different. Tall and slender, their bodies covered in fine scales that shifted color slightly as they moved, predominantly blue-green with hints of purple. Their faces were almost avian, with large, expressive eyes and a pronounced ridge where a human would have eyebrows. "Commander Xavier." The central figure stepped forward, its translator pendant emitting perfectly accented English. "I am Ambassador Krell of the Veldari Consortium. We welcome you to Nexus Station." Xavier bowed slightly. The gesture they had determined would be respectful, but not subservient. "Ambassador Krell, on behalf of Earth Alliance, I thank you for this historic opportunity." The formalities continued as both delegations proceeded to the conference chamber. Xavier noticed her team making the observations they'd been trained for, cataloging exits, defensive positions, analyzing the station's systems. The Veldari moved with a fluid grace, their gestures precise and measured. The conference room was circular, with a large table of the same pearlescent material as the corridors. Viewports showed the stunning backdrop of a nearby nebula, casting everything in a soft purple glow. "Before we begin formal discussions," Krell said once everyone was seated, "perhaps a cultural exchange, a gesture of goodwill." "We would be honored," Xavier replied. What happened next occurred with such speed that even Xavier's trained reflexes barely registered the sequence. The chamber's doors slid open. 15 additional Veldari rushed in, but these wore different attire, darker, more utilitarian, with visible weapons. Ambassador Krell and his delegation didn't appear surprised. "Commander Xavier," Krell's voice had changed. All pretense of diplomatic courtesy vanished. "Your species has attracted considerable interest. The Veldari Evolutionary Council has determined that closer study is required. This is a violation of diplomatic protocol." Xavier stated calmly, not rising from her seat. Her team remained similarly composed, which seemed to momentarily confuse the armed Veldari. "Protocol is a luxury," one of the new arrivals said, stepping forward. "I am Director Vex of the Evolutionary Council. Your species' rapid advancement concerns us. This meeting was arranged to assess you directly by taking us hostage." Xavier raised an eyebrow. Vex made a gesture that might have been amusement. "A temporary inconvenience. Your ship is already secured. Your crew will remain unharmed if you cooperate with our examination." Xavier noted with satisfaction that none of her team had made any sudden moves. They sat, watching, assessing. The armed Veldari seemed unsettled by this response. Clearly, they had expected panic, resistance, or at least verbal protests. "I see," Xavier finally said. "And what does this examination entail?" Vex approached, towering over Xavier. "Physical assessment, psychological profiling, stress response testing. We need to understand what makes your species potentially dangerous." One of Xavier's team, Dr. Chen, spoke up. "Dangerous? Our transmissions have been entirely peaceful. We've shared cultural works, scientific principles. Yet your history is drenched in warfare." Krell interrupted. "Your literature glorifies conflict. Your technology advances most rapidly when driven by military necessity." Xavier controlled her expression carefully. "History is complicated, Ambassador. Judging a species solely on its past conflicts." "Silence," Vex commanded. "Your weapons have been confiscated. Your communications blocked. You will be separated and studied. The process will be painless if you cooperate." The armed Veldari moved to surround the human delegation. Xavier made a subtle hand gesture beneath the table, the signal for her team to comply temporarily. "Very well," she said. "We will cooperate." Something shifted in Krell's expression, perhaps disappointment at the ease of their capitulation. The Veldari had clearly expected more resistance. As the humans were escorted from the conference room, Xavier caught fragments of conversation between Vex and Krell. "Remarkably compliant. Psychological profile indicated stronger fight response. Perhaps physical weakness compensated by intelligence." The human delegation was split into pairs, each escorted by 4 armed Veldari to different sections of the station. Xavier found herself alongside Chief Alvarez, marched toward what appeared to be a laboratory section. "You said this was a diplomatic mission," Alvarez whispered, her voice perfectly calibrated to be inaudible to their escorts. "It was," Xavier replied just as quietly. "Now it's an educational opportunity. For us or for them." Xavier's lips curved slightly. "Primarily for them. Condition Delta. Initiate at 300 station time." Alvarez gave an almost imperceptible nod as they were ushered into a sterile white room with examination tables and various unfamiliar equipment. Director Vex entered shortly after, accompanied by 2 Veldari in what appeared to be scientific attire. "Commander Xavier, you will be the first subject. Your physical parameters show you are the alpha of your group." Xavier allowed herself to be guided to an examination table. "I'm curious, Director, what specifically about humans concerns the Evolutionary Council?" Vex activated a scanning device. "Your adaptability. Most species specialize, evolve for specific environmental niches. Humans generalize. You thrive in environments that should kill you. You recover from injuries that would end other species. You learn at rates that defy evolutionary models. You make us sound remarkable," Xavier said mildly. "You are an anomaly," Vex replied. "Anomalies are unpredictable. Unpredictability threatens stability." As the examination progressed, Xavier maintained her cooperative demeanor. The Veldari scientists collected tissue samples, conducted stress tests, and recorded her responses to various stimuli. Throughout it all, she offered no resistance, answering their questions truthfully but carefully. 6 hours into their captivity, the Veldari guards began to rotate shifts. Xavier noticed their decreasing vigilance, the natural result of watching prisoners who showed no sign of resistance or escape attempts. In the adjacent cell, Dr. Chen and Lieutenant Rodriguez were engaged in what appeared to be meditation. The Veldari scientists found this fascinating, taking extensive notes on their breathing patterns and brain activity. "They're so calm," one guard commented to another outside Xavier's cell, unaware of her enhanced hearing. "Nothing like the simulations predicted. The director says it's psychological adaptation. They repress fear to appear stronger. Or perhaps, the first guard suggested, they don't understand the gravity of their situation." Xavier suppressed a smile. In approximately 6 more hours, the Veldari would begin to understand exactly who had miscalculated in this encounter. Ambassador Krell visited the laboratory section when the station's lighting dimmed to simulate night. He observed Xavier through the transparent barrier of her cell. "You've been cooperative, Commander. This benefits both our species." Xavier looked up from the simple cot where she sat. "Have your scientists learned anything useful, Ambassador?" "Your physiological responses are interesting. Your species appears fragile in many ways, yet resilient in others. Appearances can be deceiving," Xavier replied. Krell tilted his head. "Indeed. Your calm continues to puzzle us. Most species exhibit distress when confined. Perhaps humans are simply more adaptable than you expected." "Perhaps." Krell studied her with those large alien eyes. "Or perhaps you are planning something. Your vessel's systems were more complex than our initial scan suggested." Xavier merely smiled. "Ambassador, has it occurred to you that first impressions are rarely complete impressions?" Krell made that same gesture Xavier had interpreted as amusement earlier. "Rest, Commander. Tomorrow's tests will be more intensive." As Krell departed, Xavier glanced at the environmental control panel near her cell door. The Veldari had been thorough in removing obvious weapons, but they had made a critical error in their assessment of human capabilities. They had assumed humans would react like prey when trapped. 3 hours later, as the station's systems cycled to their lowest power settings during the artificial night, Xavier checked the chronometer she'd been allowed to keep, 2:59 station time. She looked across at Alvarez, who gave her the slightest of nods. Condition Delta was now active, the definition of mistake. The first indication that something had changed came from the station's lighting system. For precisely 3 seconds, the entire section went completely dark. When emergency lighting activated, Commander Xavier was no longer on her cot. The Veldari guard of the monitoring station barely had time to register the empty cell before feeling a precise pressure at the base of his skull. He collapsed silently, unconscious but alive. Security systems neutralized in this section. Xavier spoke softly into the subdermal communicator that had remained undetected by Veldari scanners. "Alvarez, status. Clear. Rodriguez and Chen are out. Moving to armory location." Across the station, similar reports came in from the other human hostages. The Veldari had separated them thinking it would weaken them. Instead, it had positioned the highly trained operatives exactly where they needed to be for a coordinated response. The Unity, supposedly secured and powerless, had been far from inactive. Its AI systems had spent the past hours methodically mapping the station's networks, identifying vulnerabilities, and preparing for this moment. Now, with minimal communication from the human team, it executed its programming flawlessly. Station systems began to malfunction in precise, calculated ways. Door mechanisms failed in specific sequences. Communication channels experienced selective outages. Environmental controls created isolated pockets of reduced lighting. Xavier moved through the shadows with practiced efficiency. Her diplomatic uniform, seemingly decorative, contained elements that were now reconfigured into more practical tools. The Veldari had confiscated obvious weapons, but had not recognized the potential of seemingly innocuous items. Ambassador Krell's location confirmed. Lieutenant Park's voice came through the communicator. "Command Center, Level 3. "Acknowledged," Xavier replied. primary objective remains unchanged. Minimal casualties, maximum impact. The station's night shift was understaffed. Another miscalculation by the Veldari. They had assessed humans as a diurnal species requiring darkness for rest periods. They hadn't accounted for specialized training that enabled the human team to operate efficiently regardless of lighting conditions. Xavier encountered two guards at an intersection. Before they could react, she had disabled both with precise nerve strikes. The Veldari had thoroughly studied human anatomy, but had focused on weaknesses rather than capabilities. Attention Veldari personnel. Xavier's voice suddenly echoed through the station's communication system, hijacked by the Unity's eye. This is Commander Xavier of Earth Alliance. Your security has been compromised. Your systems are under our control. This is not an act of aggression, but a demonstration. In the command center, Ambassador Krell stared at the monitoring screens in disbelief. The supposedly captive humans were systematically moving through the station, disabling security systems and neutralizing personnel with disturbing efficiency. Impossible, Director Vex snarled. They were searched, scanned, contained. Evidently, Krell said quietly, our assessment was incomplete. The command center doors slid open. Chief Alvarez stood there, flanked by Dr. Chen and Lieutenant Rodriguez. None appeared to be armed in any conventional sense, yet the Veldari security personnel hesitated to approach them. Ambassador Krell, Alvarez said calmly. Commander Xavier requests your presence in the conference chamber. Director Vex is also invited. This is outrageous, Vex declared. Guards, apprehend them immediately. The guards moved forward reluctantly. What followed was a demonstration of human combat capabilities that would be studied by Veldari military analysts for years to come. Alvarez and her teammates moved with a speed and precision that seemed impossible for their physiological structure. They didn't kill. Each strike was calculated to incapacitate with minimal damage. Within moments, only Krell, Vex, and two stunned administrative staff remained conscious. Shall we? Alvarez gestured toward the exit. In the conference chamber, the same room where the deception had begun, Xavier waited. She had reclaimed her position at the table, appearing entirely composed. The room had been rearranged. The space station's systems now displayed real-time footage of various sections where the remaining human team members had secured key positions. When Krell and Vex were escorted in, Xavier stood. Ambassador, Director, please be seated. You cannot possibly believe you'll escape this station, Vex said, though his tone lacked conviction. Escape? Xavier raised an eyebrow. We're not trying to escape. We're concluding our diplomatic meeting. Krell sank into a chair, his scales shifting to a paler shade. How did you do this? Our scans detected no hidden weapons, no communication devices. That's the first lesson about humans, Ambassador. Xavier said, her voice level. We're tool makers. Anything can be a tool. Anything can be a weapon. Your scientists were looking for technology they recognized. The second lesson, she continued, is that humans specialize in adaptation. Every member of my team was specifically selected for this mission because of their ability to improvise, to use available resources in unexpected ways. Director Vex remained standing, his posture rigid. This changes nothing. You are still outnumbered. Reinforcements will arrive. No communications have left this station in the past 7 hours. Xavier interrupted. Your automated signals have continued as scheduled, indicating all is well. As for being outnumbered, she smiled. Quality often matters more than quantity, Director. On the displays around the room, footage showed the Unity systems coming fully online, its previously concealed defensive capabilities now evident. We didn't come here seeking conflict, Xavier said, her tone softening slightly. Earth Alliance genuinely desires peaceful relations with the Veldari. But peace requires respect, and respect requires understanding. Understanding what? Krell asked quietly. Understanding that humans aren't what you assumed. We're not aggressive because we're primitive or unrestrained. We're protective because we've learned through our history that preparation prevents tragedy. Kahier touched a control, and a new image appeared. Earth, beautiful and blue. This is what we protect, Ambassador. Not just a planet, but a concept. The idea that different beings can find common ground without domination. Vex finally sat, his composure cracking. If you're not here for revenge, what do you want? The exact same thing we came for originally, Savior replied. Diplomatic relations, cultural exchange, mutual benefit, just with a clearer understanding of each other. She leaned forward. The Evolutionary Council fears humanity because you've observed our conflicts, our aggressive potential. What you haven't observed closely enough is our capacity for forgiveness, for reconciliation. You would forgive this. Krell seemed genuinely bewildered. Conditionally, Savior nodded. This incident will be classified as a cultural misunderstanding. Your scientists have gained valuable data about humans, though I suspect not the data you were expecting. In return, we ask for honest engagement moving forward. The room fell silent as the Veldari processed this unexpected turn. They had anticipated either a desperate escape attempt or vengeful violence. This measured response defied their models of human behavior. And if we refuse? Vex finally asked. Xavier's expression remained pleasant, but something shifted in her eyes. Then we leave, taking with us the knowledge that the Veldari cannot be trusted, and all future encounters will be approached with appropriate caution. I don't recommend that outcome. Director. The Unity's engines powered up, visible through the viewports. Its weapon systems, now fully revealed, remained inactive but ready. You have 1 hour to decide, Savior said, standing. My team will remain in control of key systems until then. As she turned to leave, Krell spoke. Commander Savior, one question. Your team, they are not standard human diplomats, are they? Savior paused at the doorway. Ambassador, humanity learned long ago that sometimes the best diplomats are those who fully understand the alternatives to diplomacy. The next hour passed in tense silence. Throughout the station, the human team maintained their positions, treating the incapacitated Veldari with professional medical attention. No unnecessary force, no vindictive actions, just calm, efficient control. When Ambassador Krell entered the conference room again, he came alone. His scales had shifted to a deeper blue, a sign, Savior had learned, of serious contemplation among his species. The Evolutionary Council has authorized me to negotiate genuine diplomatic terms, he said without preamble. Director Vex has been relieved of his authority in this matter. Savior nodded. A wise decision. I must ask, though, Krell continued, if you were capable of this all along, why did you allow yourselves to be taken captive initially? 2 reasons, Savior replied. First, to confirm whether this was an authorized Veldari action or a rogue operation. Second, she smiled slightly, to give you the opportunity to choose a better path before misunderstanding escalated to genuine conflict. Krell's large eyes studied her. You are not what we expected, Commander. That, Ambassador, is something all species say when they first truly encountered humanity. Savior extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Shall we begin again? Properly this time. After a moment's hesitation, Krell extended his own hand. Yes, Commander. I believe we shall. As they shook hands, marking the true first contact between their species, Krell added quietly, it seems the Evolutionary Council was correct about one thing. Humans are indeed dangerous. Only, Savior replied with a gentle smile, to those who mistake our preference for peace as an inability to defend ourselves. Outside the viewports, stars glittered against the blackness of space, indifferent witnesses to this pivotal moment between species. The lesson had been learned without bloodshed. Underestimating humanity was, indeed, an alien's greatest mistake.